Hello y'all on YouTube, this is Rob with Rob's Nerdy Knives. Today I have a very special review, long-term impression of a knife I've had for a while that I really have enjoyed and I'm still enjoying. And it may look familiar to another review, but this is a different one. This is the Evo Typhoon. This is the big brother to the Mini Evo. And this is the knife I've wanted for years. It's one of those Grail knives, and I didn't think I would ever get it. I saw it released several years ago, missed the release, and I didn't know if it'd ever be dropped again. And then all of a sudden, DLC had these available. I didn't even know they were going to be available. And I happened to see the availability, and I jumped on it, and I was kind of thinking I was in dreamland because there it is, a Brian Nadeau, sharp by design, Evo Typhoon drop point with a beautiful flat grind, flipper with a bolster frame lock, you know, with his nub D10, beautiful, what do you call it, satin finish, milled deep pocket carry clip, everything that I loved, and there it was. There was the sharp by design Evo Typhoon, the large one. And yeah, I got it and I was so excited, and I've had it and I've enjoyed it, and it's been in my rotation. If you watch any of my videos, any of the live streams, you'll see this is a regular knife in my rotation. I really, really like this knife a lot. I always wanted this one. I got the Mini Evo, had some issues with it. I still believe I got a one-off. I believe the Mini that I had, there was something wrong with it, with the D10. And I really think that had it been working as it should have been, I would probably have a Mini Evo and an Evo Typhoon today. But because I really enjoy the Evo Typhoon, and I'm not a big fan of having multiple knives, and I feel like they're almost the same, just one's a little smaller, but I really enjoy the size of this, and I feel like this is the size that I really wanted. I don't feel like I have a need to get a Mini. So to me, I'm very happy with this. And by the way, it's dirty because I use my knives. I do, I use them all. So let's talk a little bit about the knife, the manufacturer, and the designer. So the knife name, this is the Evo Typhoon. It is, the knife manufacturer is made by Riot for Brian Nadeau, and his company is Sharp by Design. So he makes, he designed this knife. He started making this as a custom. This was a mid-tech custom originally, and or not a mid-tech, it was maybe a full custom, and he would make these knives. They're very expensive, but in a way for people to get a handle on this, he started making, because he had all his little designs for it in his machining. He's a brilliant, brilliant knife maker and a designer. You can see a little scuff marks because I use my knife. I've noticed that, and I'm like, I'm okay with that because I enjoy this knife. But he decided to do a production run, and so he engaged with Riot and made did one run of this and dropped it, and I missed it. It was years ago, right when I first got into knives. Didn't know anything about it, saw it dropped, and didn't know anything how all this worked, so I missed out on it. So I got a hold of a Mini Tempest, really loved that. I got the Bowie, which I wish I had and wish I'd gotten to drop. It was such a weird tip and it cut me all the time. Eventually I got rid of that one. One, because I wanted to buy another knife, but two, because it would cut my hand all the time because of the way the Bowie blade was. And I really think if had I gotten the drop point, I would still have that one. Again, lesson learned. I'm not a big Bowie fan. Bowie blades is not my style, and I've come to accept that. I like drop point better. So I like Tanto too, but drop point and Tanto are probably two of my favorite blade styles, and this is one of them. So I got a hold of this one, received it in, have enjoyed the heck out of it. I put skiff washers in there. Did it need skiff washers? Probably not. Is it skiff washers, you know, could have been just fine without it? Absolutely. The Riot's K-ceramic ball bearing washers are great, but the skiff washers just made this knife even better. And if you're familiar with like Skiff Custom Blade Works, you'll know that those custom knives are ridiculously amazing. And that's where the Skiff washers comes from. So it's a father and son, Steve and Steve Skiff Sr. and Steve Skiff Jr. And he makes, he does a lot of the milling, machining, and he does the washers, and those are used by a lot of people. And even I'm pretty sure, we venture to guess that some of the custom knife makers use them because they're that good. They're better than some handmade custom washers, right? So I think if someone does it well and has got a big enough production, why not take advantage of that? So anyways, you can see there's Brian Nadeau, his little logo for Brian Nadeau for Sharper by Design as his company. That's his typical little logo that you get on there. Very minimal billboarding on this. This is, I believe, was this M390? If it's not M390, correct me up here. It's not M390. You'll see the correction here. But I believe it's M390. M390 blade steel, very minimal marking on this, which is fantastic. I love that. So this is inlaid carbon fiber, beautiful, beautiful. I want to call this shredded carbon fiber, and it's on both sides. And you can see the inlay is there's no transition. You can hardly feel it. Riot does an outstanding job. I don't see any voids in this, hardly any voids whatsoever, and it's just all just fantastically done. And yeah, just beautiful. So to me, I don't see any issues with this. Looking at this, it's just really phenomenal. So there you go. Titanium, a beautiful bead blasted handle, beautifully rounded, no sharp edges anywhere, very, very comfortable grip. I have medium to medium large hands, so you can see plenty of room. The clip is a satin finished clip, single pivot, goes all the way through, and you'll see one screw here, and this is one screw here to the pivot, both T8s, by the way. On the backside, no screws, completely screwless, beautiful. These carbon fiber inlays, they are part of the scale. They are set in. I believe they're glued and permanently affixed there, so no chance of really taking them off. I guess you could, but I don't know how you'd fix them back on, but just done so, so well. Really fantastic. So this is a bolster liner lock, or bolster frame lock, bolster sub frame lock. I don't know what you want to call that. It is a frame lock. You'll see the little cutout here for the lock bar, and you'll see that it has a steel bar insert that engages the tang of the blade, and it also has an over travel stop, even though the bolster frame here stops that over travel stop. That works the most, because I think this is glued, and if you're going to push, you want something to stop it more than the glued piece, because you could probably pop that off at some point, and that steel bar insert will work better. That being said, it is not your typical detent. It doesn't have a detent ball, a ceramic detent ball. It has what's called a steel nub, and it's called the steel nub. It's designed by Brian Nadeau. That's really unique, and he has a beautiful ramp that he travels up on. So once I clear this, you can see, if you look at the lock bar, you'll see how it travels. It goes up smoothly. You see, because it goes over a ramp. Goes over a ramp, and it travels up over that ramp, so it's very smooth. So that allows that beautiful buttery closed smoothness, but it also gives it that really strong detent. So it's a detent nub, and it gives it a good force resist for that flipper, and the flipper is really fantastic. You can see this. Now here's your center of axis, right? Your axis point for the pivot. Now typically people will get the flipper up higher because it gives you more leverage to flip it, but with that detent nub, it builds up more kinetic, more static energy before it turns into kinetic energy. Static energy is energy that hasn't moved yet. Kinetic is once it starts to move, and static energy can build up with more force. It's kind of like, if you have something really heavy, and when it breaks through, and suddenly when it breaks through, it goes through very forcefully. That's before it breaks through, it's static energy, and when it breaks through, it becomes kinetic energy, right? So this is when the kinetic energy breaks the detent, it moves, and it moves very, very well. And the flipper, there's no jimping on there, because your finger just naturally fits there, and it goes well. And it's like a full button. It's almost like a button slash light switch combo, sort of perfect actuation. It just really works nicely. And once you clear that detent, it just buttery, controlled, smooth drop. Now Riot does an excellent job. Typically, this is the kind of manufacturing you almost get in a semi-custom mid-tech type of knife, and that's why it's a little more expensive. It's really made by some of the high-end Riot manufacturing, and yeah, it shows, and it's definitely worthwhile, and you pay a penny for that. And I think if Brian did this knife in the USA, we're looking at a $900,000 knife here, right? And I'm glad he was able to do it a little overseas, and for me to experience the beauty and the genius of this design. So yeah, carbon fiber inlay, titanium handles, beautifully round, single screw pivot, single screw deep pocket carry clip that's beautifully satin finished, titanium all around. So this is titanium scales, right? You have a hidden lanyard pin right there. There is a steel as far as the pivot goes concerned, and the action is beautiful. So that is how it works. It opens beautifully, it closes beautifully. And I did say that the cutout here is really nicely done. This part of the cutout is that steel bar insert. It stands up, so you almost don't have to change the cutout here. It stands up like the axis, and it has that beautiful chamfering that's on there, and it's very comfortable to disengage. Really, really comfortable. It doesn't get that, like you're squeezing in there, it's hard and uncomfortable, and causes your finger to be sore, especially if you like to fidget with your knife. But this is very fidgety, very, very fidgety. So I like that. I like that a lot. The Loctite, we already talked about it. It's a lock bar, sub frame lock, bolster sub frame lock. That's what we call it, right? Beautiful, beautiful. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about the weight and measurements. Let's do the measurements on here. So it's 3.91 ounces, not bad, 3.91 ounces for a knife. Definitely lighter than some of my other knives. And let's look at the overall length on this knife. So at 3.91 ounces, we're looking at a knife. Overall length is about 8 and I want to say 3/8 of an inch. 8 3/8 of an inch is the total overall length. If we look at the handle from the very tip to here, we got about 4 1/4 inch of handle, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, about 4 1/4 inch of handle, which is nice, especially since I have medium to medium large hands widthwise, medium lengthwise. Plenty of room. So extra large, double extra large have plenty of room. Even if you choked up a little bit, you could probably get some really big hands in here. Definitely a very comfortable hand for a good presentation there. Blade from the tip all the way to the top of the handle, we are looking at, I'm going to say it's about 3 3/4, 3 3/4, so 3.75 inches from the tip to the handle. So, you know, that's definitely over 3 inches. The cutting length, we're looking from here to here, we're probably about just a little over 3.5 inches. So we're looking at 3 and I want to say 5/8, maybe 3.5 inches of cutting length. So that's pretty good. So that's nice. All right. Definitely very, very cool. I do like that a lot. Let's see here. What else? We talked about that, the blade stock thickness. Let's do that real quick. It seems like a pretty robust blade. And yeah, if you notice, I did get new batteries, so it's really nicely done here. All right, so we're looking at 159 thousandths of an inch, 159 thousandths of an inch. That's a pretty robust, thick blade. It is pretty thick in the main stock of the blade. It's not a thin blade. We're getting up there with almost, you know, like some of the Medfords and stuff like that. Probably not Spartan, but it's definitely not a thin blade. So it's a nice thin blade. It goes up to a pretty thin tip. It's still got some robustness, beautiful swedge in the top. It's great for turning, but it's thin. It's thick up here, but it's definitely thin over there. It comes down to a beautiful, nice flat grind, comes to a pretty thin edge, very sharp edge, and it has a pretty thin slicey. So it's not super paper thin slicey, but it's definitely a slice work kind of knife. I like that. And I love the flipper, how it works right here like that. It just really gives you a good guard as you're cutting. So that's always nice. So that's the blade stock thickness. So where does this knife fall into? Is it a regular knife? Well, it's over $300. This is about a $400 knife. So you're in a high-end knife. It's under $600 for sure. You could get the Damasteel version. That would definitely get you into the custom mid-tech kind of high-end knife area. But this is definitely going to be high-end. So it's about $400 knife. I think it's a fantastic deal at $400. I think it's really great. I don't think you can go wrong with it. Is it an EDC hard use knife? Well, you know, it's a matter of your definition of EDC and hard use. If you bought this knife and you regularly buy $800,000 knives, it could be a really EDC hard use. You wouldn't care about knife. If you like this knife as a collection piece, you know, I think it's absolutely could be a collection piece. No questions asked. But some people will have a collection piece they never use, and some people then will have a second knife that they can use. In my case, every piece of my collection I use. Does it mean I hard use it? No, it means some knives like this, I will have a fifth pocket knife that is a lighter use knife. That knife is not meant to be hard use. It's meant to be something that I carry along if I need to do something harder that I don't want to use that knife on. And so that's a great, you know, addition to have when you have a high-end knife that's really nice you want to take care of. But I would use this to open cat litter boxes, letters, cases of water, dog food, cat food, no problem. This is a good knife. I would EDC this knife. I do EDC this knife. You can even see a couple of scratches on here that just came from it, and I'm okay with that. I don't mind that, right? I do really enjoy this knife a lot. And yeah, it's also a collection piece because I've always wanted this, but it's a collection piece to use for me. So my collection pieces are used. Could you make it a safe queen? Absolutely, this could be a safe queen. This would fall into a lot of people's safe queen realm, and I get that and I respect that. And I'm not a bragger like, oh, I'm using my safe queen. No, it's just every knife I have, for me to enjoy my knives, I want to be able to carry them. That's my premise, okay? You don't have to agree with me, and I don't have to agree with you. We can disagree on this, and it's okay, right? You can respect it. I can respect your opinion. I can respect your stance on how you handle your knives. That's okay. I'm good with that. I just like to carry my knives. Now, I will be a little more limited use. You know, my Trevor Berger Custom Urban XL. I'm not going to hard use that. My, you know, Herman Sting. I'm not going to hard use that. My Shirogorov Quantum. I'm not going to hard use that. You know, but my McNeese Mac 2 3.5 inch one, yeah, I've hard used the heck out of that one because that knife just keeps going. It's one of those knives I can't hard use, and I feel like it was intended to be that way, and I love it. So yeah, that's one knife I'd use. You know, there's other knives that I would hard use, but some I wouldn't. So, you know, it's a matter of perspective. So definitely it's a collection piece. Definitely I think you could hard use it relative to what you would hard use a frame lock, nicer frame lock with. Definitely EDC. So that's my perspective. Design, handle, grip, we talked about this. It's so comfortable. Everything is rounded. Brian Nadeau really thought of this design. I mean, even the clip itself goes right in here into your little part of your groove right in there. So when you get a good presentation on this knife, you can cut and hold this knife really, really well. It's no hot spots on there. Everything is nice and rounded. And even there was a point where some of these were maybe Riot didn't round them just well. This one seems more rounded than my mini Tempest was. It had a little sharper edge. And even then, since then, I know how to buff that out. I know how to soften that out, and if it was bothering me, I knew how to very gently, and probably wouldn't even notice, how to make that a little softer, and that's not a big deal. I've done that on my Chavez Redemption 229 kickstop, and that made it just a great knife, if that was an issue, but it's not. This knife is just great. I love it. So design is great. The action for closing is great. The action for opening is great. The lanyard hole is great. Goes in and out of the pocket super easy. It is beautiful, deep carry. It's not ultra, it's pretty deep carry. It's not completely deep carry, but it's pretty deep carry, which makes this a great knife. Opening, closing, beautiful. It's fun, it's enjoyable. And even now, since I've broken it in, I've figured out how to reverse flick it with putting a little meat of my finger into the fuller hole, or the thumb hole there. I don't even call it more of a fuller hole. I don't know if you really call that a thumb hole because I don't think it's designed for the thumb hole, but I can do that left-handed. I can't do it right-handed because I engage too much in the lock bar. I can't quite get in there and get past that lock bar. But on the left hand, but there's no lock bar, if I can get the meat of my finger in there, I can, oops, I hit the table. I've scraped this table a couple times now. I can absolutely do the left reverse flick on that, right? So that's really nice. So I enjoy that. Fidget factor, it's a flipper. And I have a little bonus reverse flick. So for the fidget factor, I would give this a 5. This is one of those flippers like the rendition, the Chavez Rendition 229 kickstop has a beautiful flipper. The Shergorf Quantum has a beautiful flipper. The Herman Sting has a beautiful flipper. And every one of those it's up there in quality of flipper wise. And so that gives it obviously a 5 immediately out of 10. Because I can pseudo get that little reverse flip here, I'm going to give it a 6. This is going to get a 6 for being a flipper only because it's like a little bonus, right? So 6 out of 10. Now, as far as the score, the 5 out of 10, you get 100%. And I might give it a little bonus 5%, like 105, just because I can do a little extra reverse flick when I get my finger, I got to get my finger in there. I know how to do it just right. Got to get the meat and roll it in there. So there we go. And it rolls in really nicely. So once, and then my finger gets a little tired after a while. There we go. It rolls really nicely. It's just a nice little bonus, especially if you like to fidget with your knife every once in a while to be able to do something a little different. But man, that flipper is just so great. It's fantastic. So out of that, it's 105% good, fidgety goodness. It's just fidgety, fun, goodness, fantastic, fun. So yeah, overall thoughts, final thoughts, is it recommended? Yes, absolutely 100% recommended. If you can get a hold of this, get a hold of it. If you haven't gotten a hold of it and it comes out again, get a hold of it. I heard some rumors this might be his last run of this one, but I thought they said that about the last one. So maybe he'll drop another one in a couple of years. So keep an eye out for it. If you can get it on the secondary market, get it as long as it's not ridiculously overpriced. I mean, a knife is worth what you're willing to pay for it, right? And even if it's overpriced, if you feel like that knife is going to bring you that much pleasure and you're willing to pay for it, then that's what that knife is worth to you. And that's okay. That's your value on the knife. And you can do that. Don't let anybody else tell you that's a wrong value. Now, if you're buying a knife because you're going on what everybody else tells you to buy, well, you're going to be a very sad person, I think, and you'll be very frustrated because you never know what everybody's feeling. And you will run into someone who thinks it's a good decision. Others will tell you it's a bad decision. Go by your gut, what brings you joy in a knife, and buy the knife you want. And if you're willing to pay it, then you're willing to pay it no matter what anyone else says, right? And if you're not, then stick with your gut and then don't buy it and be okay with that because you said, I'm not going to pay that much for a knife. And that's your decision. You know, there's some knives I have not acquired because I'm not willing to pay some ridiculous overpriced markups. Like I could get a Roosevelt, I could get an FSB, one of those brown knives, a mini FSB. I could get some other knives that I would love to get, but I'm not going to pay the ridiculous markup. Just not going to do it. And so those aren't knives realistically for my collection unless I get in on one of those drops, right? So, you know, that's for me. I think this is a beautiful knife. I think it's great. I think you should consider it, get it. If you haven't gotten it, if you find it on the secondary market, get it. If Brian Nadeau releases another drop of these, get in on it. If you see it, absolutely jump on it. It's a beautiful knife. I cannot recommend this enough. I've enjoyed this knife. I love this knife. I think it's a great knife. So that's my thoughts on it. What are your thoughts? Any questions about the knife? Any questions about the review? Any questions about the channel? Let me know down below in the comments. Any ideas for future Rob's Ramblings? Let me know as well. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching today. I really appreciate it. And hey, if you found this content fun, interesting, worthwhile, entertaining, or informative, would you please consider hitting the like button down below? And if you've already hit that like button, would you please consider hitting the subscribe button? Subscribing and liking the videos really helps out the channel, allows me to produce more content, do more things, allows the channel to grow. And I really, really appreciate that. If you've done all that, maybe consider hitting the notification button so you can be notified of future content. And if you've already done all of that, maybe check me out over on Instagram at robs_nerdy_knives. Again, that's on Instagram at robs_nerdy_knives. Thanks so much for watching today. Have a great day and a great week. Bye.